So welcome to another retro shelf video on my YouTube channel, and it's time to open this parcel, which has come from the author of the book, and at the time of writing he is almost sold out of the physical copies, which is a shame, but there is still a free digital version available. Just going to need the scissors here to cut in. Now if I show you the front of the package, you'll also have a clue as to what the contents is. So if you know your Spectrum, you'll know what that refers to. So let's go inside to have a look. Plenty of bubble wrap arrived in one piece. So we have LOAD DIJ DIJ. Growing up in 70s and 80s England and witnessing the firsthand the home computer phenomenon, and then going on to work at Ocean and beyond, by Mark R. Jones. Of course, Mark is the graphic artist most closely associated with the Spectrum. And Andrew, cheers for buying my book. Hope you find it an interesting read. Let me know what you think. All the best, Mark. That's a signed edition. And the dedication, links, the contents. Chapter 1, 1970 to 1974. 1975 to 1978, talking about growing up. See quite a lot of text. And various links. Interesting use of the ring-bound format. So chapter 3, 1979 to 1981. Some of the films he was watching. Learn about middle school. Letters to famous people there. Lessons he was doing, 1982, and diary entries. So turn over. On that school days in Northampton. So I'm going to flick forward a bit further. I think I might just flick through to have a look. So let's have a look through. Visiting Abbey Road. I know he's a big Beatles fan. 1984. Got a Spectrum 48K, too excited to write anything. So talking about how he first got into the Spectrum. Got that Crash there. Some of the games he played. Still talking about school. Software he bought. Chapter 7, 1985. Playing Pod. More discussion of Crash and his school lessons. The software he bought in 1985. I was looking at my own work in the pages of Crash, 1986. And his grades there. Games he bought in 1986. 1987. This new game was called Whizball Ocean Software Year 1. So talking about how he got the job and the interview and going to that. His first work on an educational game. Flick forward a bit more, so we're talking about ocean here. So first bit about Platoon, games he played in '87 and owned. And interview of Grant Wilson. (1988). The can's contents ended up all over the carpet, walls and ceiling of Mr. Bracey's office. Vision Software Year 2. So more of the games he was working on. And descriptions of what to do. Mark turns his hobby into a career. PCW show. Games he worked on and bought. He's supposed to be a graphic artist. And on the next one. And now we're going on to the Amiga and games he owned. And the plan of the offices. Ocean, and talking about that layout in this chapter. (1990) Held Hostage, Ocean HQ, a list of staff. 1991. 1992, talking about Bullfrog and Flood 2, with some diary entries on what was happening on the Flood 2. 1993, decided to buy a Super Nintendo Entertainment System. 1994 to 1995. 1996 to 2000. 2001 to 2008. And 2009 to 2019, when he actually made a bit of a comeback and even worked on a new Spectrum game and the Starquake 2 high score table, which is filled with references. It's a standalone 50-page diary on the making of Mr. Doe. It's available free to download. So as a bonus final chapter for this book, links that might interest you, and an obituary for Bob Wakelin, the Ocean cover artist. So, as you can see, very heavy on the text there. I'm sure it's going to be a fascinating read. So I will leave a link in the description to PDF version, and I hope you've enjoyed this look at another book for the Retro Shelf. Keep watching the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. So when I originally filmed this video, I had just intended it to be an unboxing of the book, and then I spoke to Mark himself on Twitter to tell him how much I'd enjoyed it. And he said it was a real shame that no one had ever given him any feedback, any reviews on the book itself. So I thought I would add this little extra section to the video to let him know what I think in more detail and to let you know a bit more about the book too. As the cover quite clearly says, we find out quite a bit about Mark's childhood, some incidents in that helped shape him, and of course getting a Spectrum for the first time and getting interested in creating graphics. And then we have a very interesting section about how he sent out demo tapes to computer companies and eventually heard about Ocean. And of course it was Ocean that gave him first job at a very young age. And so we find out quite a bit about how Mark grew up, started work, and ultimately some fascinating pieces about what was happening behind the scenes at Ocean, about how Mark created his graphics, and even some funny stuff like the pranks that were going on behind the scenes, or night out that turned a bit messy. And so that's very interesting. And as Mark himself admits, he didn't always make the best decisions about what he wanted to do, about what was going to come next, and he left Ocean and then ended up back at Ocean working freelance on Total Recall. And there's quite a bit of detail on the story of how that particular game was being made outside of Ocean and was then quickly brought back in-house to be completed in time for the Christmas market. So as I say, Mark ended up back at Ocean and had to help save that project. And so then we find out about the period in his life when he was a freelancer and worked on what would have been the sequel to Flood from Bullfrog, and how that game ultimately was cancelled, about some of Mark's experiences with other computers and consoles. And I did find it particularly interesting. In most of the chapters there are lists of games that he himself had bought, and so for example here we can see the Spectrum software he bought, the full price, how much he paid for it, and even down as far to dates where he had receipts and so on. And obviously here in this chapter you can see it's games he worked on. So those are an interesting addition to the book. There's YouTube links as well, although unfortunately at the time of recording some of those no longer work. There's interesting stuff like just flicking open here, facts about preliminary docs on the game, Mega Drive consoles. And then towards the end of the book, here we have the LOAD DIJ DIJ diary, and where I was going to come to, and then we talk about, again, end of each chapter, famous people who died, and then into a section of the book about Mark becoming a DJ, and then the retro revival, the return of interest, meeting up with Joffa Smith, and how Mark was then involved in creating graphics for a couple of games. There's a separate download for the Mr. Do diary if you're interested in that, and a nice little tribute here to Bob Wakelin, who obviously Mark knew Ocean, Bob producing some of those famous covers, and Mark then turning those covers into Spectrum art. So it's a very honest and heartfelt book. It tells the story in Mark's own words, and it really puts across quite how dramatic and rapid things changed in the games industry, and how it was for Mark to be involved. So I can thoroughly recommend downloading the PDF and having a read. So that's LOAD DIJ DIJ from Mark R. Jones, former Ocean graphic artist. I hope you enjoyed this video. Keep watching the channel for more unboxing, retro shelf, merch stand and gameplay videos.